Greetings, fellow members of the Esoteric Order of Gamers, and welcome to a brand new format. It's very exciting. It's Esoteric Reviews. So what am I going to do in this new format? Well, I'm still going to be unboxing the game, as I said, but I'm going to be getting to know it a little bit as well and playing it so I can tell you about it and give you my opinion about it. Now, lately I've been thinking about reviews, and I've come to realise that you tend to gravitate to the reviews of the people who like the same kind of games that you do. It's a very subjective thing, really, when you think about it, isn't it? I mean, not all of us like the same types of games. I like a wide range of games, but I'm not too crazy about sort of ones where you add up victory points. Okay, let me see, that's 7 points for being 30 points behind the winner, and then 1 point times every piece of wood, that's 15 times, so carry the 2. I tend to like, as I said, very thematic, fun games. To me, gaming is all about fun, having fun, enjoying the company of the people you're playing games with. So while I'll try a whole range of games, I tend to gravitate to a certain type. And if you like those kind of games as well, then you'll be interested in what I have to say about new games. Not just new games though, I'm going to be looking at some of my old ones as well. And when I look at them, I'm going to be showing you all the components. Of course, I may have painted miniatures, so you can see the miniatures in their fully painted state. You can get Foamcore insert tips, because I may have done a Foamcore insert for the box. And most importantly, get my opinion about whether it's worthy to join your collection or not. So enough of the preamble, let's get started with game number 1. It is Imperium. Imperium Legends, Imperium Classic. These are 2 games by Osprey Games. They very kindly sent me these, so I was sent copies. I just want to tell you that up front. But what's Imperium like? Will you enjoy it? Did I enjoy it? What do you get in the box? All these questions will be answered in this esoteric view of Imperium. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you what's inside the box. Now, the astute among you has already noticed that there are 2 boxes. Why have they done this? And I must admit, at first I thought, why don't they just have 1 box and they put everything in it? But actually this is quite clever. Each game is pretty much the same. You get the same components counters-wise and rules-wise, but you get a different bunch of civilizations to play with. Now, the good one to start with, of course, is Imperium Classics. And this one comes with, if you look at the back here, you can see you get the Carthaginians, Celts, Greeks, Macedonians, Persians, Romans, Scythians, and Vikings. And they're all good sort of starter civilizations to go with. When you want to get a little bit more complex, you can move on to Legends. And it's got the Arthurians, Utopians, and Atlanteans, which really shake up the rules, and they're really quite different. And you also get the Egyptians, the Mauryaans, the Minoans, the Olmecs, and the Qin civilizations. So the good thing about this, of course, is you can either just start with the easy ones and stick with that. If you really enjoy the game, you can then go on and get another whole pack of civilizations as well. You don't have to get them all in one go. It makes it cheaper if you just feel like half the game. Or you can go for both of them. And they're in small boxes as well, so they're easier to store. So there's lots of advantages. Anyway, if we open up Legends, you'll see the kind of thing you get in a box. You've got a rule book. Here it is. Now, the rule book itself is kind of overcomplicated. It goes into a lot of detail. I'm, of course, supplying a rules summary and reference you'll find on my website, and I think it'll make things even easier. The actual rules themselves are quite simple. It's just that they go into a lot of detail about particular picky ways of doing things that kind of make it seem a little bit more complicated than the game actually is. There's a whole solo system, so you can play solo. I haven't played this yet, but my friend Dylan has and has enjoyed it. So there are, depending on the civilization, there's a kind of sheet of options for what they do depending on what cards they draw and stuff like that. And you can play in a campaign as well. Then you get some counters. You'll need some counters to play the game. You get 3 sheets of those counters. Good quality thick card. Down the bottom here you've got the civilizations and also the extra cards you need to play the game. So a civilization is usually just a small deck like this. Here are the Egyptians, you can see, and that is specially made for just that whole civilization. Here are the Atlanteans, that's their special deck. Now it's got a very nice insert here you'll see that it actually does have the name of the civilizations down the bottom and also the extra cards you need. Unfortunately, as nice as this looks, this doesn't really work with sleeve cards, and this is the kind of game that you really want to sleeve those cards. So I really chucked this out, and this is what I did. It's a little Foamcore one, and what we have here is a little tray in the middle to keep these counters. These are your materials and population tokens, and then we've got another one down the bottom which has got your dice, various other tokens here, progress tokens there. And then I've just used these simple dividers, which are just cut out of some plastic material, like this, to divide them up. Now, I've got a Foamcore piece, which is just as large as the box itself. And because that's got a 5mm base, there isn't space to do dividers above the actual cards, but that's fine, because it's very easy to flip through and see which cards belong to which civilizations. You've got your 3 pieces here, which you use to line cards up against. And there we go there. Now, I'd love to fit both sets in one box, but I don't think there's enough room to do that. But anyway, as you can see, this is quite neat. And all of my cards are sleeved. And the good thing is that they now fit within the box quite comfortably. These are the sleeves I used. You can, of course, use whatever type of sleeves you have access to. These ones are Swan Pan Asia ones, 74 by 89mm. They're thick. They're relatively cheap, and I use them for all sort of standard card sizes of this type. And as you can see, they're also very snug. There's no gap at the top. They fit really snugly around the card, which I prefer. But you may wish to use thicker or thinner cards, or of any type you like. So that's what you get in a box, but how does the game play? Okay, so here's our setup for 2 players, and you can see the main area is the market area. And this is where you can buy cards during the game and add them to your decks. So you do your deck building from getting these. Now, this little handy thing along the middle here shows you where to put all the different decks. You've got unrest cards, fame cards, there's region cards, uncivilized cards, civilized cards, and then a general sort of market deck, which includes the tributary deck, which is actually tributes. Though when I think of tributary, I think of the tributary of a river, so I find this confusing. I don't know why they didn't call them allies or just tributes. Anyway, they go in that deck as well. These are all identified by little icons on the bottom. If you have a card out that's either uncivilized or civilized or tributary, you put one of the unrest cards underneath it, like so. Now, I won't go into huge detail about all the rules of the game, because that's what my rules summary is for. I've done a lot of work on that already. I just want to give you an overview of the game and how it plays. Over here, you've got a simple setup in front of a player, in this case, the Carthaginians. You've got the main Carthaginian card here, which has its special ability on it. You've got the accession card here with a deck of nation cards on top of it, and you have to go through these cards and activate this card so you can turn from a barbarian nation into an empire. Over here, development cards. Once you're an empire, you can start getting these lovely development cards that give you special abilities. And this card here is your state card. As you can see, it's identifying the starting player as a barbarian civilization. When you become an empire, you turn it over, and there you can see you're an empire. On the starting card, you get these tokens. These are action tokens. You get 3 of those. You can use 3 actions per round. And then you get some exhaust tokens. So you can use exhaust tokens to mark if you've exhausted the powers of particular cards. Over here's your draw deck. You start off with 3 materials tokens and 2 population tokens. You also get 1 progress token to start with. In between the 2 players is this solstice card. It's just a reminder that when you've both had a turn, you do a solstice phase. You start the game by drawing 5 cards from your draw deck for your starting hand. The actual gameplay of Imperium is pretty simple. Like most card games, the complexity comes from what's on the cards and the combos that you can play. When you have your turn, you can do one of 3 things. You can activate, innovate, or revolt. And most of the time you're going to be activating. When you innovate, you just basically chuck your hand of cards and you can get one of the nice things from the market. When you revolt, you can get rid of any unrest cards that are clogging up your hand. They're both 2 easy actions. Activate is the main meat of the game, and that involves playing cards and playing effects. There are 3 actions you can play which correspond to the 3 action tokens you have on your state card, so you put one of those aside every time you do an action. If you exhaust a power on your card, you use one of your exhaust tokens and you put that on the card to indicate that you've used that power. The other thing to remember is that you can only play barbarian powers if you're at that stage of your development, and you can only play empire powers if you're an empire. So playing a card pretty much consists of reading the card and seeing what it does. And a lot of the time, of course, you'll be wanting to get more cards. And when you get more cards, they don't go into your discard pile, they actually go straight into your hand. And you buy them from the market. So you can either buy one normally just by grabbing the card from the lower rung of the market, out of those that are face up and available. And if you do that, you have to take any unrest cards that are underneath it. And of course you take any tokens that are on the card as well. If you get the opportunity to break through, you can take one of the face up cards and discard any unrest card that's underneath it, or you can take the top card from one of the upper decks. If there are no cards left in that particular deck, or if you want a tributary card and there are none available, you can go through the main deck until you get a card of that particular suit. At the end of your turn, there's a cleanup phase where you put one progress token on any face-up card in the market, and then you clean up your own action and exhaustion tokens. Finally, you can discard any number of cards from your hand and draw back up to 5. Because you try to cycle through the cards in your hand, you tend to discard most of your cards at the end of the turn, but you don't have to. When all players have had a turn, you'll go past the Solstice card, and that's a reminder to play any Solstice keywords on any of the cards that are in play. And that's about it for the basic rules. It's quite simple. The rest of the rulebook is made up of detailed descriptions of the different keywords that appear on cards. How do you pay for playing these cards? Well, you've got your materials tokens, your population tokens, and you can also exchange progress tokens for either one of these. So progress tokens are also worth victory points at the end of the game. Of course, there are many things you can do. You can play region cards to your play area. You can garrison cards under some of those played cards. You can attack other players. You can place cards in your history, which is underneath your main civilization card. And depending where these cards are at the end of the game and what they do, they give you a whole lot of victory points. So at the end, there is quite a bit of maths involved where you add up all your various victory points. And you have to be careful not to move your cards before you do that, because the position of some cards will influence how much victory points they might give you. So how do you develop as a civilization? Well, to move from a barbarian to an empire, every time you shuffle your draw deck, you get to put one of your nation cards in your discard pile. And by the time you get down to your accession card, then you can turn over your barbarian card to the empire side. Every time you shuffle your deck while you're an empire, you get to buy these development cards, and these have really nice abilities on them. The game ends in various ways when there are no more cards left in the main deck, when you've drawn your last development card, when players have taken all the fame cards and they've drawn over and resolved the lovely King of Kings card, and for various faction-specific reasons. There's also another way the game can end. Collapse is triggered if there are no cards left in the unrest pile, and then the person who has the least number of unrest cards immediately wins. As I mentioned, add up all your victory points and the one with the most wins. So that's my rough overview of how to play Imperium, and keep in mind it is just a bit rough. I'm just giving you an overall idea of how the game plays. There's a bit more detail involved, of course, and that's why you can go and check out the rules summary that I've got on my website at orderofgamers.com. It's a very easy rule summary and reference sheet, and it'll help you play the game easily. The first thing I want to say about Imperium is that it is fun. I really enjoy it, and I say that from the perspective of someone who actually isn't a big fan of deck builders, and especially that phase at the end where you do all the victory point counting. I know that's pretty common in Euro games, but that kind of thing is usually not really up my alley. But I can handle it in this game because in some deck builders I played, I feel like I'm going through the boring stage to get to the interesting stage. And in this, it's kind of all interesting. When you see what cards are out in the market and how they mix with your cards, there's interesting decisions to be made all the time. I don't feel like I have to buy all the boring old cheap cards to get to the interesting cards and that kind of thing. The other thing, of course, is that there are 16 civilizations in these two sets, so there's a heap of variety, and some of them really shake up the rules of the game. So I just can't imagine getting through this amount of content. I'd have to play the game a lot to really exhaust what those 16 decks have to offer. That said, of course, there is a certain amount of railroading involved in the strategies for the decks, and in fact, in the books, they actually point out what the strategies are for each deck. So you can go in thinking, oh, well, I'll get this particular civilization because they play in a certain way. So, of course, you don't have total freedom of choice. Every time you play that particular civilization, you'll probably find yourself going down that particular path in the way you play it. Again, this is offset by the big variety, 16 civilizations to choose from. Also, it's just plain fun building civilizations, and it's fun building civilizations that have a particular theme as well. If you're a warlike one, or you are much more into trading, that kind of thing. And then you get into things like the Arthurian civilization, where you're going after the Holy Grail, or the Utopian one, where you're trying to form the perfect civilization, or the Atlanteans, where you're trying not to be flooded. So there's so much variety here, and a lot to explore and enjoy. One thing I'm not too crazy about is that it overstays its welcome just a little bit. I wish it was a little bit shorter. The games can run into several hours, and I do feel there's a sort of point at around the 3/4 mark where things sort of bog down a little bit. You've pretty much set up all your combos, you're ready to go, and then you go through this process of executing your combos, getting your stuff, and there's just a bit there where I just feel it drags a bit. I think if the ending conditions had been tightened up somehow, or the exponential value of your civilization speeded up a little bit more at the end, it'd be a faster and more fun game. The other thing with this kind of game as well is that it doesn't have quite as much player interaction as I'd like. It is a bit multiplayer solo. You're doing your own thing, building your own civilization. That's a plus for many people. That's a lot of fun. I enjoy it too, but usually in my games I like a bit more player interaction. Though I find there's plenty to do on your turn, checking out what cards you want to play. Also, it's interesting to see what the other person is doing, so that's not too bad, especially with 2 players. With 3 or more players, I think it would drag a bit waiting for the other players to finish their turns. So that's what I think of Imperium. It's fun and I really enjoy it. It's not the usual kind of game that I get, as I said. It's got deck building, it's got adding up victory points. Usually I go, no, I can't stand that kind of thing. But in this game, I don't mind it so much because there's so much more to offer. The artwork I wasn't crazy about at first. It's a bit cartoony for my taste, but it's growing on me. It's kind of got a Tintin Asterix kind of feel, which I think works pretty well. And certainly there's heaps of it, and it's very colourful, and it's kind of nice to spend a few hours with. So if that sounded like the kind of game you'd enjoy, go and check it out. Osprey Games, Imperium, Legends and Classics. And of course, go to my website because I've got a rule summary and reference there for you. It's free to download. Print it out, laminate it, stick it in the box. You'll find it very useful. And if you found this video useful, please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the all notifications button, a little bell icon. And go and check out my social media. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. There's the website. And of course, I've got a Patreon page if you choose to support the Esoteric Order of Gamers, which is highly appreciated. And if you do that, you get exclusive videos and access to our Discord community. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time. I hope you've enjoyed this new format. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll answer every comment. I'm always interested in your feedback. Bye for now.